The fluorescent lights of the hospital emergency room cast harsh shadows across Sarah Mitchell's face as she cradled her daughter close, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Outside, the winter rain hammered against the windows like tiny fists demanding entry, matching the desperate rhythm of her heart. She had $47 in her wallet, a maxed-out credit card, and a little girl who still believed her mother could fix anything. But some things, Sarah was learning, couldn't be fixed with love alone. Some things required miracles, or at least the kind of money that might as well be a miracle to a single mother working. Double shifts at a diner. As consciousness slipped away and her vision blurred, Sarah's last coherent thought wasn't about herself. It was about Emma, her beautiful, brave 6-year-old Emma. And what would happen when morning came and Mommy didn't wake up? Emma knew something was very wrong when she couldn't wake her mother for breakfast. She had tried everything, shaking her shoulder gently at first, then harder, calling Mommy, Mommy, in an increasingly panicked voice that echoed through their small apartment. Her mother's face was so pale, almost gray, and her breathing was shallow and strange. Emma's hands trembled as she remembered what her mother had taught her. In an emergency, find help. But who could she find in their building where everyone rushed past each other, without speaking? Then she remembered the nice man from the top floor. She'd seen him once, helping Mrs. Chen carry her groceries. He wore fancy suits and always smiled at her in the elevator. Emma didn't know what a CEO was, but she knew he lived in the penthouse. The apartment, her mother said, cost more in a month than they made in a year. Alexander Chen was reviewing quarterly reports when the doorbell rang at 6:47 a.m. He almost didn't answer. His driver wasn't due for another hour, and he had a board meeting at 8. That would determine whether his company expanded into 3 new markets. The doorbell rang again, followed by small, desperate knocks. When he opened the door, he found a little girl with tangled blonde hair and tears streaming down her face, wearing pajamas with cartoon bears on them. She was barefoot. "Sir," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My mom isn't waking up." Alexander froze. He'd built a tech empire worth $800 million through decisive action. But nothing in his Harvard MBA or 20 years of business had prepared him for the raw terror in this child's eyes. "Take me to her," he said, grabbing his phone. Emma's apartment was 12 floors down, a world away from his minimalist penthouse. The door was ajar, and inside the contrast couldn't have been starker. Where Alexander had floor-to-ceiling windows and Italian marble, Emma and her mother had patched linoleum and furniture held together with hope. But what struck him most was the warmth. Children's drawings taped to walls, a bookshelf made from cinder blocks and boards, flowers in a mason jar that someone had picked, not bought. Sarah Mitchell lay on a worn couch, unconscious, her breathing labored. Alexander's fingers flew across his phone as he called 911. Then his personal physician, then the head of administration at Seattle Presbyterian Hospital. "What's your mother's name?" he asked Emma gently while waiting for emergency services. "Sarah Mitchell. She's a waitress. She works 2 jobs because—" Emma's voice faltered. "Because I got sick last year and the hospital bills were really big. She says we're almost done paying them off, but she's been so tired." Alexander's jaw tightened. While he was debating market expansion, this woman was working herself to death to pay medical bills. Something shifted in his chest, a crack in the careful armor. He'd built around his heart since building his company from nothing. The paramedics arrived within minutes. Alexander rode in the ambulance, holding Emma's hand while she clutched a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. At the hospital, his name opened doors that would have remained closed to Sarah Mitchell. Within an hour, Dr. Rachel Kim, one of the country's top cardiologists, was examining Sarah. The diagnosis was severe exhaustion combined with an undiagnosed heart condition, worsened by months of inadequate nutrition and relentless stress. Sarah had been giving Emma the better portions at meals, skipping her own medications to afford her daughters, running her body into the ground one double shift at a time. "She needs surgery," Dr. Kim told Alexander privately. "The longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes. But Mr. Chen, you should know, her insurance won't cover most of this. We're looking at potentially $200,000 in medical costs." "Do the surgery," Alexander said without hesitation. "Send the bills to me." "Sir, you don't even know this woman." Alexander looked through the window at Emma, who sat beside her mother's bed. talking to her unconscious mom about a drawing she'd made at school. I know enough. Over the next 3 days, Alexander canceled meetings, postponed calls with investors, and essentially moved into Seattle Presbyterian. He brought Emma fresh clothes from their apartment, made sure she ate, and set up a tablet so she could watch movies. In the waiting room during her mother's surgery, he learned that Emma's favorite color was purple, that she wanted to be a veterinarian, and that she'd never been to the ocean even though they lived in Seattle. "Why are you helping us?" Emma asked on the second day, her small voice heavy with a wisdom no 6-year-old should possess. Alexander was quiet for a moment. "When I was about your age, my father got very sick. We didn't have much money and I was terrified. A stranger, a customer at my mother's restaurant, helped us. He paid for the treatment my father needed. I never forgot that. He taught me that we're not just here to build businesses and make money. We're here to help each other." "Did your dad get better?" "He did, and he lived long enough to see me start my company. He was very proud." Alexander's voice was thick with emotion. "Your mom is going to get better too, Emma, I promise." The surgery was successful, but Sarah's recovery was slow. When she finally woke up, groggy and confused, the first thing she saw was Emma sleeping in a chair beside her bed, wrapped in a blanket that hadn't come from the hospital. The second thing she saw was a stranger in an expensive suit, sitting in the corner working on a laptop.
"Who are you?"
she managed to whisper. Alexander looked up. "Alexander Chen, I live in your building. Emma came to find me when you wouldn't wake up." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "The surgery. I can't afford. I don't have. It's taken care of. I can't accept charity. I'll pay you back, I swear, even if it takes the rest of my life." Alexander closed his laptop and moved closer. "Ms. Mitchell, this isn't charity. Consider it an investment in Emma's future, in your future, in the kind of world I want to live in. A world where a 6-year-old doesn't have to be terrified that her mother won't wake up. A world where someone working 2 jobs can actually afford to stay alive." Over the following weeks, something extraordinary happened. Alexander didn't just pay Sarah's medical bills. He hired her as the director of his newly created charitable foundation at a salary that made her cry when she saw the offer letter. Her first job was to establish a program helping families facing medical bankruptcy. But the real transformation was quieter, more personal. Alexander, who had spent 20 years building walls around his heart, found himself attending Emma's school play, teaching her to code on weekends, and joining them for pizza dinners in their small apartment. Sarah, who had learned to trust no one and expect nothing, slowly opened up to the possibility that kindness didn't always come with strings attached. 6 months later, Alexander took Emma to see the ocean for the first time. As they stood on the beach, Sarah beside him and Emma running toward the waves, he thought about that morning when a terrified little girl had knocked on his door. He'd almost not answered. He'd almost let the moment pass, chosen his quarterly reports over a child's desperate plea. "Thank you," Sarah said softly. "For everything. For Emma, for me, for giving us our lives back." Alexander watched Emma dance in the surf. Her laughter carried on the salt breeze. "Thank you," he replied, "for reminding me what matters. I built an empire, Sarah, but I'd forgotten how to build a life." That evening, as they drove back to Seattle, Emma fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted and happy. Alexander glanced at Sarah and found her watching him with an expression that made his heart stutter. "Sir," she said, echoing her daughter's words from that terrible morning, a smile playing at her lips. "Don't," he laughed. "Please, I'm just Alex." "Okay, just Alex," Sarah said. "Take me home?" And he did. Not to their separate apartments in the same building, but to the place they'd all somehow found together. A home built not from marble and glass, but from second chances, unexpected kindness, and the simple truth that sometimes the most important business decision is to open your door when someone knocks.